Hello and welcome to another edition of Beyond the Hype with Black Enterprise. I'm Alfred Edmonds Jr., Senior VP and Executive Editor of Black Enterprise, and you know I always deliver, and today's show won't be an exception. Listen, this episode of Beyond the Hype is brought to us by New York Life. And my guest today, I get everybody special I bring on the show. I get athletes and entertainers and executives and entrepreneurs. But this is a really special story because I am a girl dad, even though all my girls are no longer girls. And so companies like this are kind of close to my heart as someone who always went out of my way to try to get toys and books and things that were culturally and personally relevant to my girls when they were girls. And now that's more important than ever as we deal with the challenges of identity and self-confidence and the images that we see all around us that our kids are bombarded, practically from birth. So today my guest is none other than the founder of Orijin Bees, Melissa Orijin, who from what I can tell is now a media darling, at least among us business media. You've been in everything from, I'm looking at all, of course, Black Enterprise is part of our Plan to Prosper series with New York Life. But you are getting a lot of really positive attention, and I think it's well-deserved. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alfred, for having me. And thank you to Black Enterprise, New York Life for the opportunity.
I'm just glad that you found some time to sit with me. Let's go back to what's inspired you to start Orijin Bees, the beginning of your journey. I know you're a CPA by profession. Talk about your journey into your profession and then your ultimate journey into becoming an entrepreneur.
Happy to. So I grew up in a low-income neighborhood. I'm a child of immigrants. I come from very hardworking parents. I don't know if my parents ever just had one job or one hustle. They've always worked around the clock, and I grew up with having work ethic instilled in me and my siblings. I'm one of 5. And I became an accountant. I went to school for accounting and finance. I think it derived from one, I was really good at it. I took accounting classes in high school and always aced it. But from a sense of risk. I've never was a risky person. I thought that was something that would bring me stability. And that's where my career started. I became an accountant for, I think it was almost 2 decades. I strived and did really well, hard worker, and then I became a mom. I got married to my husband, Archyn. He's an entrepreneur. He's the founder of Orijin Culture, Afro Luxe fashion brand. And we thought we did everything right when we were pregnant and we had our firstborn. We did everything that we thought was, all right, that we're setting up this child for success. And we lived between Ghana and the US. And our firstborn, Essie, was immersed in our cultures. She was immersed in everything to ensure that she had the confidence for success. And when she started school, Essie was the only Black girl in her class. And within 3 weeks, Essie's confidence dropped. 3 weeks. In a matter of 3 weeks. And I was lost because I didn't know what we did wrong. We didn't realize that an outside environment could have that much of an impact on a child that quickly. All of a sudden, Essie didn't love her curly hair. She's a beautiful, beautiful girl, and she didn't love her curly hair. She had a full head of long curly hair. She didn't love her brown skin tone, her beautiful brown skin tone. And then her preference in dolls quickly changed. And I really struggled with her in the toy aisle. There was a moment we were in the toy aisle and she had pulled a doll it was a Caucasian doll with blonde hair, straight blonde hair. And I explained to her that doll was beautiful, but she was beautiful as well. And when I looked around to find a doll that looked like her, I couldn't. And how can I confirm that she was beautiful and included when I couldn't find a doll that looked like her in that moment for a child? And after continuously complaining to my husband, I was crying to him. There was one moment in the car, I was in tears. I didn't know how to solve it. We were trying everything, putting her in extracurricular activities with children that look like her, making sure she had the books. And then where I struggled with toys, him being an entrepreneur was he had a solution. He was like, why don't you just create what you want to see? He's like, just create the doll you want to see. And that's exactly what happened. But Origin Bees started as a passion project. I just worked in the evenings when everyone was asleep. And I worked with Essie because I wanted her to be a part of the journey. And we created the dolls and we created the clothing because I didn't want it to just be features. I wanted to make sure that the features were authentic of our community. I wanted to make sure that the hair represented our community because curly hair there's just not one type of curly hair. I wanted to make sure that we had a variety of curl patterns, and we do curl patterns that range from 3C to 4C. And the clothing, we put a lot of attention into the clothing as well, in the prints that we used, and we wanted the dolls to be really joyful. So when we designed the face of the doll, we wanted it to give out the sense of happiness and joy. So when our children were playing with the doll, we wanted them to feel that joy and to see themselves in that light, in that spirit. So that there was a lot of work that went into the design of our dolls. And we also wanted our dolls to just range in features. It, I think we have over 20 different varieties of our dolls, different between skin tone, between curl pattern, between hair color, and we're still adding to that. And I think because I'm a mother and I understand that even if my daughter may not look like the majority of the kids, I want my daughter to have a doll that looks like me. And that's why we've brought out dolls that may not be as mainstream, but they end up doing so well because there aren't other dolls that look like those dolls. And that's how we want to serve our community. We want to make sure that we're filling that gap, that it may not be some big brand's focus, but it's our focus. It's our focus to include all our children.
That's important on so many levels. I want to bring some perspective to this. Again, I'm obviously much older than you are. My children are probably around your age. I mean, they're grown women. I also have a son and a grandson. Um, and it's amazing that in 2024, this challenge for Black parents, I mean, it's not a new challenge. I mean, again, I first became a parent in the late 80s. And like you said, you're doing everything. I mean, we were raising our children in Brooklyn. They're surrounded. My former wife is Jamaican, so my children are part Jamaican, and so they used to go back home to Jamaica. And still, they had very robust exposure to Black culture in Brooklyn because if you're intentional, that's not hard to do in Brooklyn. But still, like you said, I mean, but back then, our choice was basically a brown Barbie. And no diss to Barbie, but it was basically they took the regular doll that they made with the same features, and they said,
Yeah.
let's make them brown and give them black hair, but the same texture, same body shape, same facial features, and that was better than nothing. But it still didn't, like you said, capture the range and the diversity of beauty in general
Yeah.
and beauty among people of color. And so now, again, it was great for the time, and of course, since over the years, better options came out. What my oldest daughter had access to was different from her sister, who came along. 6 years later, is different from my youngest daughter. So it. But the bottom line is, you might think, or people might assume, and the show is called Beyond the Hype because we want to get beyond assumptions, that this is an old problem. This is like a 1970s, post-civil rights movement problem. This can't be a 2024 challenge, but it is. And another reason why it's such a challenge is that even if you accept that there are more toy and doll options with more culturally diverse representation out there, what I tell people, that outside force you talked about, the outside influence is, 10 times what it was. When my daughter could see maybe TV, there was no social, there were magazines, but the magazines we brought into the house were like Essence and Ebony and Black. And, now between what they see in streaming and on video and on social and we're bombarded with images, literally from the time we open our eyes until the time we close them, and from birth. And still, the vast majority of those images otherize perception of beauty that doesn't fit a certain standard. And of course, our children are incredibly vulnerable. So I mean, I get to the core of why Origin Bees might say, oh, this is a, the dolls experiment, the classic experiment
Yep.
about, dolls that was done back in the day, way back in the day. Oh, that was back in the 1950s. Didn't we figure that out yet? We did figure it out, but we haven't really, as a society, solved that. Hence, why Origin Bees is parents and children are gravitating to it because it's doing some things that previous toy companies that attempted this maybe it couldn't do, maybe the technology didn't exist, but they didn't do. And so you hit me to the core about some of the challenges that I navigated with my daughters and ultimately with my son too, who we can go to another challenge about raising Black boys and how they see themselves and what they get to see and play with. That's again culturally healthy. It's not just about being culturally relevant. I tell people it's about being culturally affirming, healthy. That they feel good about what
Who they
not
are,
only about what
exactly
they're
who they
playing
are.
with, but themselves in a way
Absolutely.
that mainstream culture takes for granted. That yeah, of course, I can identify with Barbie
And
because
we
she's
recently
beautiful and that
came
she
out
looks good.
with a collection of B-boy dolls for that purpose.
Oh, okay.
For
I told
that
you
part,
I
because
got
of
a grandson, so I need to be looking for that.
yeah,
I got
it
a two
took
and a
so
half year old
long.
grandson.
It took so long because
Tell
we
me about
wanted
that.
to make sure what came out was exactly what our boys would see in themselves, and just little details like the way we designed they have these little jogger sets, and it's hoodies, and the hoodies unzip, and they're capes, they're superhero capes,
Oh my
right?
God,
So, and our
I'm
son, we
on
watch
that.
it with, I have a 4-year-old son, and as soon as like he unzips the cape, it's like magic to him. He's like, all right, I'm a superhero now. And he's playing with it, but the doll looks like him, right? And it's just being able to immerse our culture into their environment. I think that's what it is. It's just immersing what they're already being exposed to at home, but now making it a part of their entire environment because kids want to fit in, right?
Wow. Yeah, I have this thing. I'm into style and fashion, among a whole bunch of other things. And when people ask me what my style is or my passion for style is that I always want to stand out while fitting in. Like I want to be me in the way that I am, but still be embraced and accepted as me
Embraced.
in a culture without having to do what everybody else does or be the way everybody else is. And I don't
Absolutely.
know, and maybe I had that mindset since I was a little kid because I've been into fashion and style. My mother was my first stylist. People was like, "When I like to wear bow ties." Like, when did you start liking to wear bow ties? I was like, I think I was 3 because I remember my mom. This is the way you're going to look,
Right.
and so this idea, which I never thought about in terms of beyond my own personal approach to style and fashion, this idea of being able to stand out while fitting in is the cultural, challenge of our times as we talk about not just being diverse in terms of representation, but being diverse in terms of feeling cultural and belonging, which
Absolutely.
starts when we're kids.
That sense of belonging. And
Wow.
it carries with us into adulthood.
And when we don't have it, that carries with us into adulthood too. Even when we get to
Absolutely.
degrees, even when we get to salaries, even when we get to jobs, even when we get all these other extrinsic affirmations that we belong, but that sense of not belonging, the intrinsic thing, many of us
Right.
spend our whole lives struggling to overcome, no matter how the world is saying, no, you're good. And we're like, yeah, but you're not making me feel like I'm
Right.
good.
And being conscious about it. I remember even early on in my career when I would interview, my hair is out and I love my hair out, but I would put it in a bun. I didn't know why at the time, but I wanted to feel accepted when I would go out for an interview. I would have it in a tight bun and no one would know that my hair was gigantic. And
Well, the
it's
way you're wearing your hair now, my oldest daughter, who now, of course, women wear their hair all kinds of different ways, but her regular way of wearing her hair is the way you wear your hair. And you know, her name is Mo Brown. She's a performer. In fact, we celebrated her birthday last night.
oh,
And
happy
one of the
birthday,
things
Jen.
about her is she's been like that. I always tell people she was born that way. Like me and her mother didn't make her like that. She was born like this. I mean, she's a big personality, and when she's wearing her hair the way she wants to wear her hair, it's big because it's almost like an expression of her. And it's
Absolutely.
interesting. We talk about what the choices that we make in life and gravitating where we feel like we can belong. Again, she's been into the arts. Started out as a dancer, but now she does a bunch of other stuff. But I remember she had an internship in high school. She was 16 at a law firm. Back it was the law firm of Londell McMillan, who was, among other things, was famous for representing Prince when Prince's name was a symbol. And so, he's like, oh yeah, my daughter wanted to learn about entertainment law because she knew she wanted to go into entertainment. And Londell was like, oh, she can come intern with me. And I'd never forget, Melissa, she called me from, maybe she had been on the internship for a couple of weeks. She's like, Dad, this is great. I mean, this is wonderful. I'm learning so much. But I got to tell you something. Like, well, what is it? Well, I don't want to alarm you, but I'm going to go to college, so don't worry. But I am never, ever going to work in some kind of 9 to 5, office environment because I can't be all this that I am. And she told me that and I don't think she
How
even
amazing
realized
that
the
she knew
implications
that at that
necessarily.
age.
But
How
she
amazing
knew
is that?
that, right? And true to her word, I mean, it was early in her, after she graduated from college, there were times she had to take certain like temp jobs
Yep.
to get going. But she's like, no, I'm pursuing this life, and this life has to accept me. And like say, and part of her is her big hair when she wants it to be big, blonde, two-tone, two colors. She's
Yep.
she's a little person, but she's a big personality. And she kind of had instinctively knew that the first time she was in an environment where you're kind of expected to conform to a certain rigid, far less rigid today than it was back then. But and she knew, she was like, I love it. This is great. I'm not talking about not going to college. I'm not talking about I don't want to work. I'm just saying I know this isn't where I can be.
It's not me.
Who I can be. And again, I didn't, at the time I was like calling her mother, we talk to your daughter. But looking back, as we again, she was hosting a talent showcase in Manhattan last night. I mean, in the Bronx last night, which she's been doing for 15 years, among other things. And she was her. She's still her. And so
that speaks
I
volumes
bring
to
all that
you
up.
and her mother as well, though, for her to be able to realize that.
Well, I was blessed because her mother is like you. Her mother's Jamaican, and her mother actually wanted to go into the arts, but a good, hardworking Jamaican family, she's like, nah.
Go to work.
And today she's a very successful business administration professional at a major corporation. But so I think her mother was more open to it because it was something that she couldn't do because culturally that wasn't the way. It was like, no, you're going to get this degree, highly educated family, multiple degrees, every child, and that just wasn't a sensible thing to do. On my side, and I came from a working poor household in a working class community, also one of 5, the oldest of 5, and I was blessed because my mother was just happy that I was successful. I was identified as academically gifted in preschool, so there was other people in the family that had the doctor, the lawyer, but I was blessed to have a mother that says, whatever he does, as long as he's successful and self-sufficient, I'm good.
Right.
So my degree,
amazing.
Melissa, I mean, many people who know me know, but a lot of people don't know, I didn't study journalism at all in college. I didn't know I was going to end up in media. My degree is in art.
Wow.
Studio art. I'm a trained visual artist, even though I don't practice nearly as much as I used to back in the day. And you're going to understand this. My grandparents, my paternal grandparents, also hardworking, up from not up from slavery, but close, North Carolina.
Yeah.
My grandmother was a nurse. My grandfather was a preacher and a handyman. It was all about hard work. Most of the people in my family are nurses or military guys or construction workers. That's the kind of background I came from. So when I told them I was majoring in art, my grandparents, it wasn't until I graduated that they would even tell people that. They told people I was majoring in psychology. They couldn't wrap their minds around. I'll never forget one of my uncles said, because I was recognized as the outstanding writer and artist for my high school class. So when I told my uncles found out I was majoring in art, he was like, they call me Junior. My uncle was like, you already know how to draw, Junior. Why are you going to school for that? Because now of course it's very easy to
from a place of love, right?
Yeah, it was all from a place of love. They only knew what they knew. One of the challenges of raising Black children, certainly then, and it's still to some degree the case now, is often, I can say for my parents, they were raising me for a world that they would never understand, that they would never enter. And so my mother didn't really understand where I was going because her experience didn't allow her to even understand what that looked like. But you're right. I was blessed to have a mother that said, I don't know where he's going. I don't know why he wants to do what he wants to do. But
Right.
as long as he's earning it, as long as he's self-sufficient, and as long as he's happy, he can do it. And again, I got so many friends, including my former wife, who sometimes like, I wish, again, her mother did it from a place of love too, but
Yeah.
she would have been doing what my daughter is doing now if,
Right. And I never felt
anyway.
pressure from my
Yeah.
parents, but I felt like
Mhm.
just because I was such a risk averse person and I was going to college and I was
Yes.
taking student loans and I was like, I need to pay off these
Yes, and
student
same
loans.
here. Yeah, yeah,
And I
exactly.
was so laser focused, and maybe it was driven by fear, but I just wanted to make sure that I could like be self sufficient. And that's where, and when I look at my children now and they don't have that block that I had, their mind is
Yeah.
so open. It's something that
Yes.
I find just amazing that to them they don't have that block where they think that something's not possible. And even entrepreneurship to starting up, they start businesses every other week.
Yeah. Well,
You know what
my
I mean?
daughter
Like
is, as
they're
you
always thinking
probably,
of new ideas, and to them,
yeah,
starting a business is just solving a problem. And I think that's I'm
yeah.
looking
All my
forward to
kids
it
are
when
like
they
that. But to your point, my oldest daughter, she's never been anything but an entrepreneur, because once she made that choice, it was pretty much, I got to figure out how I'm going to make money doing the things I want to do. And now, again, I'll be 64 in about a week and a half.
Oh
She's
wow!
been
Well,
my
happy
role
early
model.
birthday.
Thank you. She's been my role model from an entrepreneurial standpoint, because the way I'm trying to learn to be at this stage of my life. Like you said, she comes with the idea. Oh, okay. Tomorrow she's doing it. She's like, no, I had the idea yesterday. Now
Right.
I'm doing it. Because you're right. They don't think in terms of hesitation and fear and what if this happens, what if that happens. They're like, if it
Yeah.
doesn't work, then I'll try something else. But
Definitely.
but
And
since we're go
I've
ahead.
been lucky enough to my husband comes from an entrepreneurial family, and because he was an
Yes.
entrepreneur well before me, I was able to learn lessons that he learned without having to experience the same, and being able to leverage that type of experience and also lean on his willingness to take risks, because if I was
Mm.
so afraid, he would give me that push to take that risk.
Well, I'm glad we just kind of naturally dovetailed into our childhood experiences and our current experiences, and we're in our personalities, because part of this conversation is what I'm calling the mind over money conversation. You're probably the fourth entrepreneur since the new year started on this show that I've had this conversation. It's really about, you know, what our relationship and mindset around money and finance was when we were kids, how that changed over time, and how it's currently has been shaped by your journey as an entrepreneur. What I've been using as a framework for this conversation is a book by Tara Madam Money Jackson, um, who is one of my mentees. But she invited me to write the foreword to this book, and it's called The Four Financial Languages. Really good book. I know I wrote a foreword, so I guess I'm plugging. Uh, I'm not
I
exactly
have
at
it
all
on my
biased.
list to pick up.
Good. Yeah. But she wrote the book because she was looking at the way money is obviously or arguments or conflicts about money is a driver between the health of marriages or not. There's that often quoted quote that usually money is a big driver when marriages don't work out. And her thing was, it's usually because while we're all talking about money, we're not all speaking the same language. And so she broke down the four financial languages into four buckets. She said most people are either their language is spending, so there's spenders, there's investors, there's savers, and there's givers. And when she sent me the draft of the book to write the forward, I was like, this is actually fascinating. As someone who has also co-written a book about healthy relationships, but also has spent my career as a financial journalist, I said, this is really good. And so for the sake of these interviews I've been doing for Beyond the Hype, I've been talking to entrepreneurs and say, what would you say was your dominant money language or mindset when you were a kid? Where did that come from? Has that changed? Why has it changed? Now, the truth is all of us have probably all four, depending on circumstances, but there's kind of a default one. For me, I know it's saver, for all the reasons we talked about. I came from an environment where my mother didn't have ready access to credit. We were a hardworking family. You didn't spend money you didn't make. You always put some money aside for the rainy day. And I got well into the middle class before I really appreciated that while saving is actually important, it will always be important, you can't save your way to wealth. That sooner or later, as you talk about, you're going to have to risk some money and then some kind of investing. You can't just say, I'm going to put money away and basically hoard it and have enough to live on for the rest of my life. And that, of course, coming to Black Enterprise helped my evolution once I got into the actual middle class and changed my money personality in some way. So that's my personal journey. What would you say was your journey? What kind of, would you say is your dominant personality based on your upbringing, and how has that evolved over time?
I would definitely say growing up, it's between spender and giver because I loved giving gifts. I come from
Mm,
like a community oriented home. So
yes.
I enjoyed spending, but I really enjoyed giving things to others that I cared about. I'm not sure which one was dominant, but I was definitely a spender as well. Even into my professional career, my wardrobe was always on point. And I
Well, shit,
think once you get
no, I'm not
accustomed
going to
to
shame you about that because I'm with you. You look,
so
what
you
Deion Sanders
understand.
says,
So
if you look good, you feel good, you go play good.
right, right. This is going to impact my career
Yes.
to get that raise. So I definitely was always a spender and always a giver as well. I really enjoy giving gifts to people and putting so much thought into it for them to know that I know who they are at their core. And as I became an entrepreneur, that shifted where completely shifted to becoming an investor, putting your money to work.
Mm.
I didn't understand that part. I didn't understand the importance of making your money also work. I understood about working myself and being a hard worker, but I learned the importance of putting your money to work as well.
That's so important. I mean, for me at the stage of my life and career, because once I got to the point, and again, I was in my easily into my mid 40s before I really started getting this idea that I can't work forever for money. Like sooner or later, there's going to be runway that runs out. That no matter how much I make, I got to put it to work for me, so that at some point in the future, and I'm living that future now, I want to work because I want to work, not
Right,
because I have to work. And so,
right.
especially during the pandemic, that really came home for me because of the isolation, and a lot of work couldn't be done whether we wanted to or not. And it was like when this thing is over, when I get back outside, and Melissa, I've been way outside. I'll be outside.
I need to do more
I'm talking
outside
about
stuff.
I'm talking about Paris to buy outside. We went to see. I went to see Beyonce in Paris. I couldn't just go in Newark. I had to go.
Oh, that's
But my
amazing.
point is that I came out and I was like, you know what? My kids are grown. I'm single. What is my excuse? My job is not holding me back because now I have Wi-Fi. Will travel. I can pretty much do it anywhere. But I came from that hardworking environment, and this goes to money because money is about options and goals. I didn't know what it was like to take a real vacation. I traveled
Yeah.
for work. I traveled for, I didn't just say, you know what, I'm going to go and lay on a beach for 2 weeks and just chill because that's not the orientation of where I came from. And so
Yeah.
I came up with this idea about I'm not going to spend my rest of my life living to work. I'm going to work to live. And when you think like that, it changes your whole orientation about what money is for. Talk to me about the
Absolutely.
influence. I mean, you talked about the influence of becoming an entrepreneur, but the influence of marrying an entrepreneur who is more risk, understands the nature of risk, who grew up with that understanding and appreciation. Did that
Yeah.
have an impact on your money language? And what would you say is
Absolutely.
his money language if he were to say?
His language is definitely investor. He's definitely always talking about putting the money to work. He's like, it's got to work for us. And I'm sure that comes from also being a child of two entrepreneurs. His parents have always been entrepreneurs, and he grew up in that environment. And it took me quite some time to really grasp that because of my upbringing and under I grew up that you work to make money, right? And then you make sure you position yourself and have stability from the hard work that you're doing. And I would say my first biggest risk was even with Origin Bees. I received my annual bonus and I took that, and that was my first investment into Origin Bees. I said, I invest into everyone. This time I'm going to invest into myself. And that was probably my biggest risk. And even as we've grown with the company, I've understood and understanding more and more about reinvesting, the importance of reinvesting, letting that money continue. And that's such an important factor with small businesses being able to grow, to understand that you have to continue. It's a cycle. You have to keep investing and investing in your company as you grow. For us, we're a product based business. And if we're growing, then that means our inventory production, that production is going to grow. So the more you make, the more you have to produce. And if you want to scale and just being able to forecast, luckily, I'm an accountant. So on the data side, I can, that I like to think that there was a purpose behind my previous career and it was for this, but I definitely I wouldn't have taken the risks without my husband's entrepreneurial spirit and his push. I remember in 2020 is when I resigned from my career. I was at the firm for over a decade. And I asked my husband, I was like, what if it doesn't work? What if everything falls apart? And he was like, we rebuild. I was like, oh, that easy, right? But it's completely different from where I was coming from. Like, all this hard work, if things fall apart, we just rebuild. But he's like, yeah, we rebuild. If things don't work, we rebuild. But it's true. As long as we have another day, you rebuild if something doesn't work. But it gave me that push I needed. And of course, even I'm a very spiritual person. And I told my husband the other day, my husband Archyn, I said, I don't see how you can be an entrepreneur and not have faith, because you have to have faith, right? Because when things get hard, something always comes through. It's so far it's been for us, and it's only, I believe it's because of my faith and other things that are at work that's beyond me. It's so much more powerful than me. I just have to keep working and knowing that what we're
Yeah.
doing is for the better good that's bigger than us, bigger than me, bigger than my family. It's for our community. You have to trust that and keep pushing forward, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the very neat. I'm with you that I don't see how if entrepreneurship in many ways is creating something out of nothing, or as our late founder once described our business, late founder of the iconic Earl Grey Senior. Um, Once it's in the air, you got to be able to continue to build it and change it without landing. You know,
Oh,
you're in the
I
air
love that.
though. It's not
You're in
like
the air.
we're going to shut all the business down and then retool and then get back up in the air again. Once you're
Right.
in the air and you're talking about investing and then growing and deciding, well, we don't need that part anymore, and so we need to jettison that, but we still can't let the plane come down. We gotta keep
I
it in
love
the
that.
air. And obviously, you're taking on more and more passengers, more employees, more customers, more stakeholders.
Absolutely.
So the plane is getting bigger, and you got a bigger load. And these propellers
Yeah.
we had when we started is not doing it anymore. We got to figure out to add these jet engines, but we can't land.
Can't land. I
And
love that.
so very much of it is what's holding you up. When nothing should be holding you up is your faith, your sheer
Your
belief
faith.
that this should be, and I'm going to believe it should be. And our current CEO, Earl Butch Graves Jr., the oldest son of the founder, and he and I, basically grew up in the company together. I mean, that's the mindset he had, both during the very difficult transition when we transitioned from being a single magazine publishing company, which was like the first 45 years of our existence, to this digital first media platform. People say, oh, you guys are so smart and wise. We were like, no, if we didn't do it, we'd be out of business.
You
And
have to
making
pivot.
that
Yeah.
transition was extremely challenging. And then we had the near death experience of the pandemic. And I still don't know, Melissa, how we got through it other than
I
faith. It
know.
was like, you know what? We can't imagine a world without Black enterprise. Fortunately, a lot of people, entrepreneurs, stakeholders, Black executives in corporate America, they were like, we
We
can't
agree.
imagine a world without Black enterprise. So therefore, we don't know what's going to hold it up. We don't know what's keeping the plane in the air. But what it was sheer belief in the idea that keeps the plane in the air. And
Right.
entrepreneurs, especially if they've been it for a while, they understand that. After a while,
Yeah.
it's, do you want this to keep going or
And
don't
even when
you?
I
And if
think
you
about
do,
these businesses that have been
mhm,
around for decades, like Black Enterprise, because I'm
yeah,
an entrepreneur now, when I see success, I'm like, man, I really wonder what their journey was like, right? Because you
mm,
see the headline, you see the success, but once you're an entrepreneur, it wasn't the easiest ride. If you've made it this long, then they've been through some experiences and they've come out on top, and it's just, I think, so admirable and so much to learn from.
And now you hit on why I love doing what I do. Get to talk to people like you who do get it. So let's talk about again your money journey, your money mindset, both in terms of the present and the future, your future goals and hopes for Orijin Bees, the future goals that you have for your children when we talk about legacy and their children, and again, your business is not just a we make this, we sell this for a profit. You're also on a mission that goes beyond that, just because the nature of what the business is about. Like I said, it's about community. It's about creating spaces and relationships of belonging through the products that, as we discussed, may be for a little 5-year-old today, but will still impact that 35-year-old tomorrow. What is your goal? What do you see going forward, and how do you see your money journey maybe evolving as time goes by?
So, a few things. With Origin Bees, our goal is to serve our children from birth through adolescence and then when they go off. So, we're continuing to add more products and more collections that align with different age groups and different products. So, for example, like making sure we have products that include music from our cultures, include just things that you might not see. Even like for a newborn, you hear all the different songs and their toys, but there's no music or rhythms from our community. So we're creating different products like that. And my husband and I have ventured because he's been an entrepreneur for over a decade, and with this experience with me, we've come together to co-found a company. We'll launch it. It's being launched soon, but it's to share our experiences and knowledges and our lessons learned with other small businesses in our communities to help them grow at a faster rate and not be having to maybe learn those lessons because we've experienced those lessons. So they start at a higher level in the ladder, right? So maybe they can grow even more exponentially. So I feel like we have this responsibility with our lessons learned, with the way we've grown, with what we know now, that it's our duty to share it with our community, to be able to help others. And I, for me, I think the way that we'll grow as a community is just the knowledge sharing. If we can share that our knowledge with one another, and for example, if I hear someone in my circle is going into a big box, I'll send them a message. I'm like, give me a call, and I will share what I've learned, right? Because we're in big boxes, and that's what I hope. I hope that we can benefit others in their growth from our experiences, and that would be so fulfilling for us. That we're only here for, we don't know for how long, but what we leave behind is the most important thing. And for our children, we want them to discover their purpose. We're all here for a purpose, and it's our job as parents to be able to nurture that. So anything they're interested in, we put them in those activities, and we try to, if we feel like they're getting like some type of block or anything where they feel like they're not capable, we try to attack it right away to clear that. That's, I think, growing up, I was born and raised in this country. My family's from the Cabo Verde Islands, but I didn't realize how many mental blocks I had on what I'm capable of. And I pray that my children don't have that. So those are a few of our
You,
goals.
you, I was saying this in a totally different context. I do a lot of entrepreneurial and other mentoring. For example, I'm a mentor going to my third year as a mentor for Pharrell Williams Black Ambition Prize program. They have a very amazing mentorship program for the entrepreneurs in that program. And I've always been passionate about mentorship on my own ever since I was a recent graduate from college. And what I was telling one of my mentees a couple of days ago is that most of the time our challenge is not capacity. We're capable of doing pretty much
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Our challenge is that our capacity is here and our belief is down here. Because no matter what our capacity is, we don't do more than we think is possible. And a big part of the challenge for black and brown people in particular is that we have to overcome barriers of our own belief, our own that, and then we find out that wait, this thing we thought we couldn't do, or we were told, or are being told, that's
Right.
making us believe this thing, and then we find out our capacity is way more. I don't know if you ever heard this. I don't know if it's true or a myth, but it's a great story that kind of illustrates this. I was once told, or I read someplace, that If you put fleas in a jar, right, but it's an open jar, they will jump out of the jar, right? But if you put fleas in a jar and put a top on it, they of course will jump and they'll hit the lid. And supposedly, at some point, you can take that lid off, and they will never jump more than what they've been taught by that lid is the highest
Wow.
they can jump. And again, I don't know if it's scientifically true or not. I've never done the experiment. I never heard it. But I remember somebody saying that to me. And it's like, that's what the difference between belief and capacity. And we often live in a world, especially as people of color, especially as women, girls, being taught, no, this is your capacity. We're going to put this really artificial lid in your mind, and this is what you can do. And then after you take that lid off, you can go the rest of your life thinking that's your capacity. And a big
Right.
part of our challenge as, again, women, people of color, as entrepreneurs in particular, is at some point you gotta say, I have to believe. This goes back to faith again. I have to believe that my capacity is further than what I've been taught, or even what I can see. And
Right.
and when you talk about that for your children, the biggest gift I think I've given to my children, and the biggest gift my mother gave to me, was this idea that I don't really understand what you can do, but don't let belief limit what you can do. And this idea of
Right.
maximizing human capacity is the ultimate form of wealth. I tell people that's really the ultimate form of wealth, when you
Absolutely
really
is.
are not limited by belief.
And I think that most parents may agree, and I'm sure this is how it was with our parents, but if our children could see themselves in the way we see them and their capabilities.
Yes.
I remember there was
Yeah.
one moment I was in the media for something, and I had shared it with my mom, and I was like, "Can you believe it? Can you believe they chose me?" And my mom was like, "Of course I can believe it." But do you know what I mean? Like, just that. But that's the
Yeah.
way we see our children, right? We see that, we know what their
Yes.
potential is, and we know how amazing they are and how gifted and what they came to this world with a purpose. But it's hoping that they can see that themselves into adulthood.
Yeah. My mother was the one person. Again, I came from the kind of background. Again, public assistance, financial aid for college. My mother, struggling as a divorced single mother with your children on her own. There was a lot of reasons for her to say, "Come, cool down. Don't aim too high." And there were other people in my life that loved me that did kind of say that.
Yeah.
I cannot remember one time in my life, Melissa, when I came home and told my mother I was going to do something, and she was like, "You can't. You shouldn't be trying to do that." Like I remember when I came home with my art degree and declared I was going to be a journalist, and the rest of the family was like, "What? What happened?" And my mother said, "If Junior said that's what he's going to do, that's
That's
what
what
he's
you're
going to
gonna
do."
do.
And that's my biggest secret weapon, even though I still struggle with doubt and, you know, what if this doesn't work? Like you said, those things don't go away. Those feelings that you grew up with don't go away. I
Right.
have to remind myself, you've been pretty successful for now. You're a 40 plus year career.
Right.
You've done it before. Why don't you think you can do it again? And so it's so important. I mean, you're doing it for your children directly, of course, you and your husband, but through Origin Bees, you're doing this for children in general. This is another version of generational wealth. Now, the catchphrase, everybody says they're doing that, but you're actually creating a mindset of generational wealth, because everybody who gets Origin Bees product, a doll, or something that says, no, your belief should rise to this capacity, and your capacity is unlimited. That I can't, again. Now you're touching me as a parent and now a grandparent, and touching me as someone who really cares about, obviously, every generation advancing further than us. And that doesn't
Right.
happen with just they went to better schools and they got better jobs. It still goes back to they have a different level of mindset and belief around money, around possibility, around careers, that we didn't have and our parents couldn't have. Yet
Right.
here we are. You know.
Right. And it's our job as a community to be able to try to like break those barriers for our children, for the next generation and the next generation and so on.
So you mentioned earlier, obviously, Origin Bees is in big box. And so I'm going to make sure we don't end this conversation without letting everybody know where can they find the product. Even if you want to talk about your journey from where you started to even getting, a lot of people dream of getting into big box stores. Often they, be careful what you ask for because when they find out what it
Yeah.
takes to get
That's a
there, they're
whole
like, oh,
nother
maybe not.
interview.
Yes, exactly. We're saying that for another time. But where can we find your products, and where can we continue to follow you in your journey on social or on websites or whatever? Let's do the products first because I
So for
already got
our
you on my
products,
shopping list,
you
my
can
grandson.
find us for our products. You can find us at orijinbees.com. That's the first place. And you can find us in Target. You can find us on Amazon, QVC, a few other retailers, and we have some also some boutique shops. We're trying to strategically place our dolls where our community is, and and with social media, you can find us Orijin Bees on all the social media platforms, and it's Orijin Orijin Bees Bees. I should mention it's an acronym, and it means our representation is just inclusion normalized, beautifully empowering every soul. A lot of people
Now,
don't
in
know
my
this, and
research
I
for
should
you, I
share
did
that.
not realize that. I did not realize that. That's great. That is
Yeah,
really great. You're on my shopping list already. Let me ask you this
thank
because
you.
obviously I talk to different entrepreneurs, and now you're at a stage where yes, you've gotten through launch, you are now established, you're in the air and you're flying. Um, what are this is an area where a lot of entrepreneurs have to make some really smart choices about growth, how to grow, how fast to grow. You triggered this question because you talked about how yeah, we want to be readily available, but we also want to be targeted because for both business reasons and other reasons, you don't want to just be everywhere and it doesn't sell everywhere. You want to be where your
For our
customers
communities.
are. And so there's choices that you got to make about how big you want to be and how fast you want to get there. Still maintain profitability because again, we got to keep the plane in the air. Um, Still serve the community, not be distracted from your mission because you're at the stage of your business as an entrepreneur that you can get shiny object syndrome, meaning somebody says, "Well, this worked. Why don't you make culturally sensitive hats or culturally sensitive
Right.
radios or something else that kind of your mission, but it's not really a mission." Um, just talk to me a little bit about where where your mind is in terms of how you're managing the growth and stability. You want to grow the company, but I've seen more companies grow themselves out of business than I've seen companies kind of fail the way people most think the businesses fail.
It's funny you say that because I would say last year there was a moment that I came to. We were growing extremely quickly, and I felt like I hit the brakes. I'm like, hold on, let's remember why we started this. Let's remember the purpose behind this, and every decision that we make in this company has to be with that purpose in mind. And it has to be I'm running this company as a mother because if I run this company as a mother, then the decisions that we make is for other children and for the children of other parents. And that's I believe that that's the reason why we started. So that's how we're going to move this company. We're going to move it with that purpose, and for the opportunities that come that align with that purpose, we will embrace it. And if they do not, then they're not our opportunities. And we we also know that we have so many children in our community that may not their parents or guardians may not be able to afford our dolls. So we do a lot of gifting. We work with other companies that can partner with us for us to gift because it's just as important for them to have dolls that look like them. And it's with that. It's running this company as a parent and being able to serve our children. Remembering that is the core.
You underscore two things that I think is critical to the success of companies and of individuals. One of the things I tell people: if you find your why, you will find your way, and if you lose your why, you will lose your way. And that's we've known major, large corporations. I don't have to drop all the names of them. Eastman Kodak. Oops, did I say somebody's name? But we know those brands. If you go to business school, they'll tell you, oh, they look like they were unbeatable, and somewhere along the way, because they had so many options, because they had so much resources. My friend Damon John from Shark Tank wrote a book called The Power of Broke, and part of the power of broke is not getting so rich that you start doing things that you have no business doing just because you have the resources to do it,
Right.
and you lose your way, you lose your why. And so this whole idea, like I'm running this business as the mother that was the mother that started this business. Yes, I'm a CEO. Yes, I'm a founder. Yes, 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 yes. But when all is said and done, the other
Mm.
thing that I tell people and that I learned, I guess everybody learns, I won't call it the hard way, I'll call it from experience. But I tell people all the time, success is a test that's very easy to fail. Like when you're really successful, that's often when you're the most at risk. You think you
Absolutely.
know it all. You think you got it like that. You think everything you touch is going to be gold. You get a little bit of amnesia of how hard the climb up was. There's this other parable about climbing a mountain, and and the first person that makes it to the top to, I don't know, Mount Everest or Mount Kilimanjaro or whatever, and they say the person, the success wasn't getting to the peak, the success was getting back down safely, because a lot of people made it up but they couldn't make it back down, and a lot of people died on that mountain because they got there but they couldn't
Yeah.
get back down. So you're not successful until you get back down. And so
The
whenever I'm having a big
sustainability.
win, I'm always like, I got to remember I'm almost at my most vulnerable point because I am winning big. And that's
Right.
when you're most vulnerable. So that whole success is a test, it's easy to fail. And that mindset that you just described is what it takes to navigate a company for decades, for over years and decades, because there's always going to be ups and downs. You got to navigate changes in the marketplace, changes in consumer taste, changes in the financial markets, changes in access to capital, political, geopolitical stuff that has nothing to do with you, but may
Right.
make it difficult.
Influx.
You're talking about the supply chain issues. How do we get
Oh,
this
I
from there to
remember.
here when we can't go? All that stuff. And so I mean, see, you see why I love doing this show, because you guys always give so
Oh,
much
I've
great
enjoyed this so much.
insight.
And I was nervous, but I've enjoyed this conversation so much.
I told you, I told you. All I do is I just get you to drop all the gems you got. I'm like a robber. Like, give it up, Melissa. I know you got it.
No, I'm
Melissa,
grateful for
it's
this.
been such a great conversation. It's such a joy to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me as my guest on Beyond the Hype.
Thank you, Alfred, for having me. Thank you, Black Enterprise. I'm so grateful.
I told you guys, we did it again. It's another one, another great edition of Beyond the Hype. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior Vice President, Executive Editor of Black Enterprise. This edition of Beyond the Hype was brought to you by New York Life. Listen, I'll see you next time. Please take care, be well, and don't miss the next episode. Bye-bye.